And I think one of the fundamentals of Transfrontier conservation areas and protected area development is ownership that is vested in the countries and in the communities. So thank you and welcome Brighton and Nils to Peace Sparks TV. Absolutely delighted to have both of you here today. We're going to talk about the Malawi-Zambia Transfrontier Conservation Area. But I think before we go into the specific details of the program that we are doing together as Peace Parks and the German government and KFW and the Department of Wildlife National Parks in Malawi, it would be very good if you could introduce yourself, and maybe we should start with Brighton. Brighton, if you can maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, your title, and what you do and your background.
Thank you so much, Werner, and welcome everyone. My name is Brighton Kumchedwa. I am the director for the Department of National Parks and Wildlife. My overall responsibility is to guide operations of the department in various protected areas, but also working in partnership with the different cooperating partners in our protected areas. So largely it has been giving directions to operations of the parks and as well as cooperating partners like PPF and KFW.
Thank you, Brighton. And also Nils, thank you very much. Nils, if you maybe can introduce yourself and give a little bit more about your background.
Yeah, good morning, Werner, Brighton, and all visitors to PPF TV. My name is Nils Meyer. I'm working in Germany for KFW, that's a development bank of the government, and I'm in charge of Transfrontier Conservation Area projects in the Southern African region, now for the past 8 years.
Thank you, Nils. So, Brighton, what is the Malawi-Zambia Transfrontier Conservation Area, which is the topic of our conversation today, and where is it? Can you elaborate a little bit on this?
Malawi-Zambia Transfrontier Conservation Area. We are looking at protected areas in Malawi that are contiguous to protected areas in Zambia. These are protected areas that sit on the international border between Malawi and Zambia. So for the case of Malawi, we are talking about Kasungu National Park, Vaza Marsh Wildlife Reserve, and Nyika National Park. So as for Kasungu, we are talking about Lukusuzi, Luambe National Parks, whereas up north, Nyika Vaza, we are talking about Lundazi Forest Reserve, Mitengi, and a few other, Msalangwe, for example, North Ruangwa, and a few other protected areas on the Zambian side.
So what is the philosophy? It's contiguous to the protected areas in Zambia, but so what? Is it important then, or why is there a program then?
Yeah, the issue is it is very important that there is sort of like joint management for the two governments in the management of protected areas, because it simply shows it's one ecosystem. In other words, we should allow, for example, free movement of animals between the two countries, but also we should allow joint operations, joint patrols for the two countries to manage these protected areas that fall on the international border.
And maybe a last question for clarification, is this a formal process between the two governments, or how does it work?
Well, this is a very formal program for the two governments, where in 2015, the two heads of state then signed what is called a treaty that now legalizes the operation of the Malawi-Zambia TFCA. So yes, it's something that is very formal for the two governments.
Nils, so how did KFW become involved in this in the German government, and what is the role of KFW in the development of this Transfrontier Conservation Area?
Yeah, thank you, Werner. Yeah, I think there are two questions. So how did we get involved is now for nearly 20 years the German government has been supporting transfrontier conservation areas in the SADC region, in Southern African Development Community area, starting with Greater Limpopo Transfrontier Park between Mozambique, South Africa, and Zimbabwe. Later on, the big CASA program of 5 other countries, and then more recently, Malawi-Zambia TFCA. And out of the 18 TFCAs in the SADC regions, these are the 3 largest and biggest, and from our perspective, very, very important ones. Also advanced in terms of institutional and legal development. And of course, this is a multiple development objective. It's not only biodiversity conservation, environment and development, but it's also regional integration, peace and security, and all these other topics on the agenda. The German government has ongoing support in the field of environment since the Rio Convention, so at least for 30 years, always trying to reconcile environmental objectives and also the development agenda and the well-being of the population. So just as a background, and KfW is an implementing organization for the German government. So the ODA support, we are doing the financial cooperation, whereas GIZ is doing the technical cooperation. So I think that's more or less the background and the role. Of course, I can provide more details, but maybe you have specific questions to that.
And in the Malawi-Zambia Transfrontier Conservation Area, what is the role of KfW?
We are kind of providing the funding from the German government to the governments of Malawi and Zambia. So we have been, since appraisal and approval of the project, we've prepared the grant agreements and the separate agreements, all the legal requirements for setting up the funding flows and the various contractual arrangements, setting up a project management unit at regional level, transboundary, but also at field levels in Zambia and in Malawi, where it is required for the implementation. And we are kind of doing the follow-up. So we are in charge and supervising all the procurements, the financial applications, project design, the reporting, the M&E and stuff like that. And Peace Parks is playing a major role in the project as an implementing agent to the 2 governments, Malawi and Zambia, and seconding staff for the project management units and field offices. And on the Zambian side, there's also Frankfurt Zoological Society for North Luangwa National Park.
So Nils, the very nature of Transfrontier Conservation Area is more than just formal protected areas. It's also compatible land use, and it's very much in terms of coexistence with people in the landscape. So it's a multifaceted, complex process, and it's governments and it's and as the German government through KfW has now implemented multiple projects over the last few years. Are there any highlights for you of projects that really stand out in the Malawi-Zambia TFCA, or ones that you're specifically very proud of or that is in progress?
Well, I think we have been quite successful and very active in the field of human-wildlife conflict mitigation. And I think some major interventions have been implemented or are nearing completion, especially on the Malawi side. A huge and large fence and a lot of stakeholder engagements and in Vasa Marsh Reserve, and very soon also on the southern side of Nika National Park. So I think that is a very, very positive development. And I've been in Malawi just recently, and we also had a courtesy visit from our ambassador to Malawi in Lilongwe, and we received really a lot of great feedback. And this has changed the situation overnight for basically each and every one. So rangers can do much more in terms of normal obligations of patrolling, law enforcement, and also extension to the communities, because there's a lot less human-wildlife conflict that they have to address. So with very few resources now, they can really concentrate and focus on their key work. And the same side, the communities say overnight now they are safe and they can even plant crops and commodities that they couldn't do because of elephants, and also for the livestock, they feel much more secure. So you see a tremendous development in that buffer zone area, only since the infrastructure was done and all the stakeholder engagement processes were developed. And we also see a shift in attitude and mentalities, mindset, who is in charge of that fence, and is it the department or the Germans who are doing it, or is it something that the communities and the traditional authorities outside also own and co-manage together with the government. And I think that is very much needed to make it effective, but also to make it sustainable. So that's just one kind of outstanding example. A lot of socioeconomic development was done over the last 3 years, with so many households benefiting for livelihood improvements in agriculture, in livestock, in forestry. The cook stoves, the women are quite happy with some of the programs. And we hope to get the water supply project done up until next year. And that will give another boost for the socioeconomic situation of the people. So you may wonder to what extent is this conservation, but it's quite clear that we can only be successful in conservation if we are also working with the people and addressing their needs and trying to get that balance. And then once you have that trust and support from the communities, then you can be also much more successful in your conservation endeavors.
Yeah, very well said, Nils. Thank you very much. Brighton, any remarks from your side about projects that stood out for you or over the last few years that you're really proud of as a department? And of course, there's also challenges, right? So what's your views on progress made?
Well, I must say I 100% agree with Nils, what he has just said. In fact, I came back last night from Nika and Vaza with the German ambassador. You know, it was really interesting to see Rangers happy, you know, for a number of things. Coming out from themselves to say, well, now at least their houses have been rehabilitated, they are living comfortably, they have beautiful uniform. So I think these are some of the things that are making this project or the intervention stand out. Infrastructure in terms of houses has rehabilitated. I think it has brought a total change. And at the same time, the support that it is providing towards law enforcement, I think it is also making a change, because it was very encouraging to see plenty of wildlife as we're just driving to the lodge, not necessarily on a game drive. As Nils says, the ambassador went back satisfied with what is happening, both in terms of law enforcement, infrastructure development, but also the impact that it is making on the communities, on the periphery, looking at activities that are engaging in order to provide them as alternatives to getting into the protected areas. I think this will stand out as one of the best interventions so far the TFCA has obtained or has gotten from German government.
Thank you, Brighton. Maybe a last question to you, Nils, and I'll put a last question to Brighton as well. With these complex processes, there's obviously essential building blocks to be successful. And how do you think the Peace Parks Foundation is helping and contributing towards sustainable development in conservation areas in Africa?
Yeah, well, I think, as you said, it's complex and it's multiple layers. So, number one, Transfrontier conservation areas means it's a cooperation between countries. It's not just a single park, it's not just in one place. But so we have a lot of cross-border issues, joint operations, agreeing, harmonizing policies, discussing priorities, and stuff like that. And there you have the treaty, but you also have all these structures that need to be in place. Whether it is technical meetings, working groups, directors, PSs, so permanent secretaries or ministers meeting, and sometimes, of course, even going to a cabinet, because it is not just a single sector, but we also have to address and some trade-offs or synergies between various sector developments. It's clear that for tourism we need immigration, we need border posts, we need visa regimes and other stuff. So it is quite a complex enterprise, and Peace Parks has been very instrumental and, in my view, really the unique NGO and supporting organization on that level of TFCA developments in the region. But it also comes then down to the country level, where we say, okay, you have the parks, the protected areas, you have the buffer zones or the corridors in between, you have the general economic development, and there, of course, you need a lot more stakeholders and implementing partners to be associated. So it is very important that Peace Parks has that convening power and is seen as a kind of honest broker, and really is an organization that is helping others to be part of that development and story, because it cannot be done just by 2 or 3 organizations and KfW support. I think that's important. Last not least, to make a long story short, really becoming a co-management partner of protected areas. I think that's a more recent development that Peace Parks is undergoing, with quite some success already in some countries like Mozambique and also in Zambia. I think for Malawi it will be something new, but definitely something that we see with a lot of interest. And I think that's also important for the countries, that you get a diversity of co-management models and co-management partners in the protected areas. And so we welcome PPF there. If you, as I said, get other partners on board as a kind of consortium or in a special purpose vehicle, where other NGOs and other organizations can also support the development. So these are maybe just 3 examples for the role of PPF, and all of them are really so important. So I just hope that you can maintain to run such a complex business on all these various levels of intervention.
I agree with what Nils has said. First of all, I think before I think intervention of other cooperating donors, when we look at the TFCA establishment, I think it is associated with the Peace Parks Foundation. Peace Parks Foundation assisted to bring together different governments in the management of protected areas, and because of that effort, it has given confidence to other cooperating partners, donors who have come in. For example, the German government has come in a number of ways through KfW, GIZ in our protected areas, and we've seen other donors coming in, ADB, you said or US government. So I think it is simply because of the effort that PPF is putting into this, in the establishment and the development of protected TFCAs, that is giving confidence to other players, and at the same time, indeed, trying to achieve the objectives of conservation in protected areas that share boundaries or sit on international boundaries. So a good case is for Malawi, which started a long time ago with just an MOU, but now ended up with a treaty. But this, the mastermind, I would say, has been Peace Parks Foundation. So yes, Peace Parks Foundation has been very central to the development of a number of TFCA in Africa, more especially SADC region. And as of now, SADC has taken this, has embraced this, and promoting even more TFCAs which are not there. So I think it's a very good initiative that has been steered by Peace Parks Foundation, and whatever we are achieving in these TFCA areas, I think PPF is one of the major contributors.
Thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen. I think that brings us to the end of our discussion this morning, and I really appreciate the time that you've given, and certainly gives me a lot of hope. And I think if it wasn't complex, there was no need for a Peace Parks Foundation in the first instance. So these are by its very nature complex processes, and one of the lessons that I've learned, it's a long process. There's no quick fixes. It's a development process, but it's also about ownership. And I think one of the fundamentals of Transfrontier conservation areas and protect area development is ownership that is vested in the countries and in the communities. So I think with that foundation, one can only move forward successfully, and we know there will be more and more pressure on natural resources going forward, especially in the next 20 or 30 years. Especially in Africa with the development projections that there are and the population growth projections. And I can only thank you for the partnership, and Nils in particular, to you and the KFW team and the German government. It's really an honor, and I mean, if it was not for you, I think we would have not seen the successes that we have today. I think you can be very proud of what has been achieved in terms of benefiting people and benefiting nature. And we hope to continue on this trajectory of growth, and Brighton as well, from the department side. Thank you for your leadership that you've shown in spearheading this initiative in Malawi, and we really look forward to what this new chapter will hold. As Nils says, we are looking towards this co-management arrangement, and we are looking forward at creating a special purpose vehicle that is inclusive of communities and other stakeholders and other NGOs. And I think with that platform under your leadership, it really sets a very good tone for the future of protected area development and management in the larger context of regional conservation and integration and ecological functioning, which is ultimately what TFCAs are about. So to both of you, as always, a great pleasure. And thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it, and we'll speak again soon, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Werner. Thank you, Brighton.